Do Muslims hate Jews? Many people think because we Muslims support Palestine in their resistance of the Zionist regime and Zionist occupation, then we Muslims by default hate Jews, all the Jews, just like that. Well, if this is what you think, then you can't be more wrong. Actually, throughout the history of Muslims and Jews, they coexisted peacefully, except when the Jews, in certain or in some occasions, betrayed the Muslims and breached the peace treaties between both of them. Let me take you back to the first conflict ever happened between Muslims and Jews, and that was in the second year of the Islamic calendar. The Islamic calendar starts when Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, migrated from Mecca to Medina. He spread Islam after the advent of Islam. He spread Islam in Mecca for 13 years. Then he was born in 570, so he got the message, received the message when he was 40. That means 610, and he stayed in Mecca for 13 years preaching. That means 13 plus 10, 23, 623 AD. And then he migrated to Medina, lived there for 10 years until he died. So 623, that means in 633 AD. So in the second year of the Islamic calendar, the first battle ever happened between Muslims and infidels, between Arabs who chose Islam and Arabs who did not choose Islam. So the Jews here were not involved at all. Muslims won that battle, and it seems that did not make the Jews in the Medina, in the city where Muslims lived, did not make them happy. And at that time there were three main tribes, Jewish tribes. One is called Banu Qaynuqa', the second is called Banu Nadir, the third is called Banu Qurayza. So let's see how conflict started between Muslims and these three tribes. The first tribe, Banu Qaynuqa'. The conflict started, they lived peacefully and everything was fine between them until a Jew saw a Muslim woman in the market, and then he tied up the hem of her dress to a log or something. So when she walked away without feeling anything, her dress was lifted up and revealed her legs. So a Muslim was there. He got angry and he attacked the Jewish guy, and a fight erupted, and the Muslim killed the Jew. So the Jews in the market gathered and they killed the Muslim, and so that fight became a big fight between Muslims and Jews. And in order to save the blood of both Muslims and the Jews of that tribe, the only solution was for that tribe to leave the city. And that, of course, at that time Muslims were the majority. Muslims had the bigger army, and of course any battle between Muslims and the Jews, definitely the Muslims would win. So the only solution was for that tribe to leave in order to save the blood of the Muslims and the Jews. Then we go to the second tribe, tribe that's called Banu Nadir. Again, after the first battle of Badr in the second year, and after that great victory Muslims achieved, as I said, the Jews for some reasons were not happy. So a Jewish guy, his father was an Arab, but his mother was a Jew, so he was Jewish from that tribe, the second tribe that's called Banu Nadir. His name was Ka'b ibn al-Ashraf, and he was a poet. After that battle and after the victory of Muslims, he started writing poems attacking and criticizing and making fun of the Prophet for no reason, just for no reason. He was not triggered by anything except by the victory of Muslims. Nobody, no Muslims at all did anything wrong or said anything wrong about him. He started to write this poem against Muslims and also Muslim women. So by doing that, he preached the peace that was between Muslim community and the Jewish community. Between Muslim community in the Medina and his tribe, especially his tribe. So that was another conflict ended up by his killing, and also because he preached the peace between the two communities. And also the second reason for that really made the conflict bigger, that tribe, Banu Nadir, tried at least twice to kill Prophet Muhammad. One of them was to drop a huge rock on him while he was sitting under a house, at a certain house. A guy went up the roof and tried to push a huge rock to kill him. So they tried twice to kill him. So that was a breach of that peaceful condition between Muslims and the Jews at that time. So again, the only solution was for them to leave the city. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, offered them a peace treaty. That was in the third year or in the Islamic calendar. So 1 year after the betrayal of Banu Qaynuqa tribe. The following year, the Banu Nadir also breached that peace conditions between Muslims and Muslim community and the Jewish community. Prophet Muhammad offered them a peace treaty. They rejected to have a peace treaty, to have a written peace treaty. They rejected it. So the only solution was them to leave the city, and they chose to leave the city rather than having a written peace treaty with Muhammad, peace be upon him, and live with them, coexist with Muslims peacefully in the city. So the outcome was for them to leave the city. Then we come to the third tribe. The third tribe, this Banu Qurayza. That conflict happened in the 5th year in the Islamic calendar. At that time there was a war between a battle called the Battle of Trench, because Muslims dug a trench around the city. So it was called the Battle of Trench. At that time, all the Arab infidels, the Arabs who did not accept Islam, all the tribes gathered and made a siege around the city in order to attack Muslims. So Prophet Muhammad had, peace be upon him, had a peace treaty, a written peace treaty with the Banu Qurayza, not to betray him, not to get involved in the war, to stay out of it. It's a war, it's a battle between Arabs and Arabs, between Arabs who chose Islam, Muslims, and Arabs who did not choose Islam, did not accept Islam, infidels. Okay, so let the Jews stay out of it. Why? It was very important. It was strategically very important for Muslims to keep the Jews out of it, because the Jews at that tribe, they had a gate through which the Arab infidels could get into the city. So it was very important for the Muslims to have this peace treaty with the Jews in order not to let the Arabs, the Arab army, get into the city. And it was agreed upon and everything is fine. But what happened during the battle? The battle was something different. What happened during the battle? A guy, an Arab leader called Huyay ibn al-Akhtal, wanted to enter the city from that gate. So the Jewish leader, whose name is Ka'b ibn Asad, refused to let him in. And he told him that he had a peace treaty with Muhammad, and Muhammad never betrayed them. He was good to them and everything, and he could not betray Muhammad. But then that Huyay ibn Akhtal told him to let him in, just let him talk to him. He managed to get into the city, and he talked him out of keeping this peace treaty. He convinced him to breach that peace treaty and end it with Muhammad. So he led the army, got in the city through that. But Muslims had this trench around them, around the city, and managed to stop the army, the Arab army, from crossing that trench, because it was so huge. It reached up to 5,544 meters. 5,544. That's more than 5 kilometers. So it was a huge trench, and more than 5.5 kilometers in length, and it was more than 4 meters in its width, exactly 4.62 meters, and the depth was 3.23 meters. And why it had to be so wide and so deep? Because the horse could jump over it, so it had to be so wide, more than 4 meters, and it had to be so deep, more than 3 meters, so the horse cannot get out of it. And indeed, the Arab army could not cross that trench, and there was a huge storm that really dismantled their tents, and they had to gather their stuff and go back. And that was a victory for Muslims without even having to fight. But the Jews already breached the peace between their community and the Muslim community, and so a punishment had to be done to them. Actually, after that, Jews lived in a Muslim community throughout the history of Islam peacefully, and coexisted with Muslims with no discrimination, nothing like this anti-Semitism we have seen in the West for more than 1,000 years. They were not persecuted by Muslims, and according to to Jewish historians, they lived their golden ages only under Islamic rules, and their best time, their most golden time of their history was when they lived in Andalusia, under Spain now, under the rule of Muslims. And only after the fall of Granada, both Muslims and Jews were persecuted by European regimes, and we know how they were mistreated and ill-treated and persecuted in Europe for many hundreds of years before and after that, until the mid of the 20th century. So in short, we as Muslims, we have no problem with the Jews. Throughout our history, we coexisted peacefully with the Jews. Only until 1948, when that state of Israel was established by taking the lands of Palestinians, then a conflict started to happen between Muslims and the Jews. And at that time in Egypt, as a person coming from Egypt, there were many thousands of Jews living in Egypt, living peacefully together with Muslims and Christians. The Egyptian community at that time consists of Muslims, Christians, and Jews. But after 48, there was mistrust. Mistrust was born between Muslims and Christians on one side and Jews on the other side, because there were many Jewish spies working for the newly established state, Jewish state. And many of them left Egypt to the occupied Palestine to live there in their Jewish state. So even I remember in 1956, in 1954, 1956, most of them were gone already, had to leave Egypt. But some of them remained in Egypt, even after 1956. Some of them remained in Egypt, and many of them changed their names to Muslim names in order to keep their properties, and because there was already a case of and conditions of an atmosphere of mistrust was created in the society because of that newly established Jewish state that you call Israel. At that time, and exactly in 1954, there was a movie, Egyptian movie, called Hassan Marcus Wokohin. Hassan wa Marcus Wokohin. Hassan and Mark and Cohen. Hassan, Muslim name, Mark, Christian name, Cohen, Jewish name, in order to reflect the peaceful coexistence between these three communities and the people who follow these three religions in Egypt. And that movie was turned into a play in 1960. In 2008, another movie came out under the name of Hassan wa Marcus, Hassan and Mark, because now the community in Egypt consists of only of Muslims and Christian, and again to reflect the peaceful coexistence between Muslims and Christians in Egypt, because there are some people who try to fan enmity between the two communities. But for thousands of years, we lived together, Muslims, Christians, and Jews, we lived together in peace. I personally, I know some Jews, not many, I have to say, but I have no problem with them. I have no problem knowing Jews and having Jews as friends, so long as they are not Zionists. Because there are hundreds of thousands of Jews around the world and rabbis and who hate the idea of establishing a state for themselves now, because they believe this is against Judaism. They believe this Herzl was not even a Jew. Of course he was a Jew, but they believe that he was atheist, and his idea of establishing a state for the Jews is very much against Judaism, very much against Judaism, because according to Judaism, the Jews must gather in Palestine only after the return of the Messiah, and they should follow him. So like Muslims who should also follow the Messiah Christ, peace be upon him, after his return, we also believe in him, we should follow him. Christians, true Christians, would follow him. Only those who don't follow him and follow the Antichrist, they would be on the wrong side. They would be on the wrong army. And whether you are a Jew or Christian or Muslim or whatever, if you follow the Antichrist, then that means you are on the wrong side. So the enmity is not between Muslims and Jews. It's the problem and the conflict between Muslims and Zionism and Zionists. Okay, this Herzl was atheist. Many people say so. So it's not because he was Jew that means he just followed Judaism. No, so many Jews didn't really follow Judaism. Like Spinoza, for example, the Jewish philosopher, most famous of them. He was born as a Jew, but he did not really follow Judaism, and he was atheist. His philosophy is a philosophy of atheism. Herzl was the same. Herzl was a secular person who wanted to achieve his own agenda, political agenda, by establishing Israel and a state for Jewish people, a land of no people for people with no land. This is a big fallacy. Of course, Palestine was populated by Palestinians for thousands of years. So that state that he established, and with the support of Britain and Western powers and America, that state was a Western, and still is, of course, a Western project in the region to keep the Western interest in the region. That's all. It's Zionism is a political, racist, imperialist, colonizational project and movement. It has nothing to do with Judaism. And when that Benjamin Netanyahu used and quoted a verse from the Torah, same like Herzl also quoted from the Torah in order to convince many Jews to follow him and to support him. Benjamin Netanyahu did the same, quoting from the Torah, giving himself a license to kill children and women and civilians, and some rabbis inside the occupied Palestine supported him and said, yes, this is Judaism, kill all the children, kill their children. That's why we see all the bombardment, all the killings they do, targeting civilians, especially targeting children and women. I'm not saying this is Judaism. We know that this is not Judaism. This is not the true Judaism. If it happened in the past, I hope some rabbis who are well versed in Judaism can explain it to us, can explain that verse of Amalek. All right, I'm not entitled to explain it to you guys, but a rabbi should explain it. But anyhow, if this is their religion and this is how those Zionists use or misuse their religion, then they need to justify. True rabbis, they need to justify it and explain it. Our problem is not with those rabbis, with true Jews, not with Judaism. Our problem is with the Zionists, with Zionism. As I said, it's a political, racist movement, hateful movement against humanity that targets children and women. We see Israel only targets hospitals, schools, refugee camps, churches, mosques, only targeting civilians, asking civilians to move from North Gaza to south. And when they move, they target them. And there are many videos on YouTube you can watch if you don't believe me. They even target their own people, and they admitted that by mistake they targeted those civilians who were in the musical concert, not Hamas. This is not Hamas doctrine, not Hamas ideology to kill civilians. This is against our Islam. This is against our Islam, but they killed them and they burned all their cars in a way that impossible for Hamas to have this massive explosive power to burn all these cars in this. This done by jet fighters, not by these machine guns Hamas had when they crossed the borders. Okay, and they admitted now that they did it by mistake. And now the people in the Jewish people in occupied Palestine, they started to believe that's not done by Hamas. Our problem is not with the Jews. We don't hate Jews. As I said, I have a few Jewish friends who are not Zionists. If you are a Zionist, then you can't be my friend. You can't be my friend. You are a Jew against Israel, against Zionism, then you can be my friend. I hope it's clear now.